Yo, what's up guys? Old School Dan here and welcome to the mini series of Joe Weider principles. In this video, I'm going to talk about what Joe Weider calls the solid base of the Weider system, which is progressive overload. So, with that being said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who Joe Weider is. Then, I'm going to talk about what progressive overload is. Then, lastly, I'm going to teach you how to use the progressive overload principle. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so who is Joe Weider? He is considered the father of bodybuilding. He's also the co-founder of the IFBB, which is the International Federation of Bodybuilders. Also, he is the creator of the Mr. Olympia, the Mrs. Olympia, and the Masters Olympia. You may have famously seen him in a lot of Arnold's pictures, a couple pictures with Mike Menser. I mean, with every old school bodybuilder you can find out there, they've taken pictures with Joe Weider, Danny Padilla, Tom Platz, even some of the new bodybuilders too, like Phil Heath. He's taking pictures with him. I think Ronnie Coleman. I don't know if it's Ronnie Coleman, but this guy's taking pictures with every bodybuilder there is. All right, so now that you know who Joe Weider is, let's get into the good stuff, the principle. What is progressive overload? Well, progressive overload is the gradual increase of stress placed upon the body during exercise training. This was a concept that was developed by Thomas DeLorme during World War II. Well, while he was habilitating soldiers during World War II. Alright, so if you want a really quick example of what progressive overload looks like, take a look at the picture with the man and the animal. Just for an example, let's just give this example a story. The man has to carry his baby ox that was just born up the mountain so he can get it some food. As you can tell, he's in pretty decent shape. And the ox was just, it's still a baby, so it's still pretty small. But the next month, as he begins to feed the ox more, it grows. And as it's grown heavy, I mean, it's gone from 90 pounds to 120 pounds now. So what just happened? What happened was that he had a load, which is the ox, and he was adapted to it. He was used to carrying a 90-pound ox up the mountain, but the ox gained some weight. It went from 90 pounds to 120 pounds. So therefore, the load was increased. Now, take a look at the picture on the left, how it says load, adaptation, increased load. So right now, the ox is the load, and he adapted to it. He was used to carrying a 90-pound ox up the mountain, but now it weighs 120 pounds. So he increased the load. And when you increase your body has to adapt to a new type of stress. And when you adapt to a new type of stress, you're not the same person you were before. In terms of training, he is now bigger. In order for his body to handle the stress of the ox, I mean the mass of the ox, his body had to transform. This is a really good example of progressive overload. What's really interesting about progressive overload is that this principle can be easily applied to life itself, not in just terms of training. It was said that Arnold said that he used bodybuilding as a tool in his life. Now, let me give an example of how you can use bodybuilding, how you could use this principle in your life. Say you have an anxiety when you approach women. You're like afraid to like approach them. If you just like never approach them, you're just adapted to that same behavior. You're just gonna always be nervous. But if you were to increase the load, meaning approaching more women, you're transforming. Your body has to adapt to a new type of stress. It has to learn how to handle that stress. And the more you do it, the more you get used to it, and the more you're adapted to just like approaching women. You get an expert and then expert and an expert, and then boom, you have no problem approaching women. Now you're a new person. Your body has transformed due to the amount of stress you have given it. Alright, so right about now, I feel like you have a pretty good idea of what progressive overload is. So we're going to move on to the next slide and talk about how to use progressive overload and just like what to do. One way you can use progressive overload is to increase the weight, increase the resistance. I remember a long time ago, I was doing incline presses with like 60, 65 pounds, and that's all I can do. That was like 1 year ago. And now, since I like added more weight, like gradually you have to increase the resistance. Like once you get good at doing 65 pounds, you can do 8 reps like perfectly, like no problem, then 95 pounds. And then as you start to see, you'll start to like escalate. And then like I went from doing 65 pounds to doing 90 pounds now, like 8 reps pretty easily too. And what results in that from what is a result from progressive overload itself is increase in muscle size and increase in strength. You know, a lot of people tend to forget the principle of progressive overload. It's such a powerful training principle. You should always live by that, man. That is like a number one life thing. Like progressive overload can be used in all forms of life, man. When it comes to talking to women, training, I mean whatever it is, homework. All right. Another way to use progressive overload is to just increase the reps. Say you're used to doing 65 pounds for dumbbell presses, 8 reps totally easy, like no problem. And instead of doing 8 reps, do 12 reps. And then you'll start to find that, oh shit, 12 reps is kind of hard. And you can just go by that too. Another way to use progressive overload is to increase the volume. So instead of doing 3 sets, do 5 sets. Sometimes when I do full body training, I can vary from doing 3 sets to 5 sets to 6 sets to 8 sets. I mean, sometimes even 10 sets. It depends on how I'm feeling because I don't want to overtrain. I know how my body responds and I know how to handle it. When I get stuck in a rut in a plateau, I know how to power through it. It just depends on how you know yourself. So you can increase the volume, meaning just increasing the sets. That's another way too. Another way is to increase the training frequency, meaning, I mean, if you hit chest one time a week, go ahead and hit it twice. Sometimes, I mean, I always train full body, so I hit everything 3 times a week. My chest gets 6 sets, my back gets 6 sets, my calves get 6 sets, my quads. I mean, everything. I mean, for you, if you're on the full body, I mean, if you're on the one body part a day or like you're on push pull, I mean, you can add another like I don't know, another leg day, a third leg day or whatever. Just increase the training frequency for a certain muscle group. And the last one is decrease rest time between sets. This is something I love to do. This is something Vince Gironda was a big fan of too as well. Now, this is something Vince Gironda was a big fan of because he was a big fan of doing more, like the same amount of work as another bodybuilder is saying he's doing like, say another bodybuilder is doing like 30 to 40 sets. His bodybuilder, someone like Don Hallworth, can get all that work done in 30 minutes. He was a big fan of that. Intensity, getting a lot of work done in a short amount of time. This is something I used in my competition days when I was competing. I was doing 8 sets of 8 reps. I was doing about 40, maybe 50, 60 sets in one workout, and I was done in about 30 minutes, 45 minutes tops. So that was all the forms of progressive overload, how to use them. Let me go over them real quick. So I can start off with the increasing the resistance using more weight. If I'm used to doing 65 pounds, I'll do 70 pounds for 8 reps. And then you can also increase the reps. Instead of like you doing 65 pounds for 8 reps, do it for 12 reps. And then you can also increase the volume. Instead of 3 sets, do 5 sets. Your body won't be used to that. Like Arnold says, shock the muscle, shock the muscle. It's like I know you're gonna go to I know you're gonna go to the bench and you're gonna do 225 for 5 sets. And then this time just start off with 315 for 5 sets. And then increasing training frequency. So your chest knows it's gonna be worked on Tuesday. Why not give it another day to shock the muscle? And that's progressive overload right there. You're increasing the training frequency. Your body's not used to that. It has to adapt to a new type of stress, like I said earlier. Then the last one is decrease rest time between sets. Getting a lot of work done in a short amount of time. That is intensity. That is what builds muscle. That is what Arthur Jones preached. That is why he's a big fan of high intensity training. He would do 3 workouts a week. I don't know if it was, I think it might have been full body. I don't know the way he would separate it, but he was a big fan of getting a lot of work done in a short amount of time. Vince Gironda, same thing. Doing 8 sets of 8 reps, 15-second rest in between sets. I was doing 50 sets, and I would get it done in 45 minutes. That's intensity right there. That is progressive overload. So with that being said, like this video right now. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching. This is Old School Dan checking out. Peace.